Hi everyone, chapter 7 in Kenny and the Dragon. Imminent extermination. Imminent meaning it's about to happen, and extermination is completely destroying. So I think they're talking about Graham the dragon. The gold-hilted sword shimmered in the morning light as George swiped the air with the weapon. The knight went through a series of attack motions, then stopped, a bit winded, and grinned at Kenny. The Riverstone stomachache finally pushed the breath out of the boy. Dizzy and lightheaded, he dropped his mug on the chessboard, drowning the pieces in a fizzy brown deluge. Deluge is like a big flood of water. But this was, of course, in a blink, George dropped the sword and caught Kenny as the lad was about to topple backward off of his stool. "Little squire," he cried as he helped Kenny up, "are you okay?" The young rabbit caught his breath and his eyes slowly focused on the kindly, brave face of George. This codger was certainly not at all what he expected. He was a knight, a royal guardsman, and a dragon slayer. And if the stories George had shared with him over the years were even half true, then he had to warn Graham. Immediately. "I've got to go," Kenny said as he headed for the door. The knight stopped him. "But you just got here. Are you okay? Is it—" George paused, kneeling down to look the lad in the eyes. "Are you worried? About me? Because you don't have to be, son. Once I get suited up and on that hilltop, this monster will be slain in moments. I know how to handle these devils. You can even watch or help if your parents allow it." It was too much for the lad. Kenny dashed out of the shop without even a goodbye. He pedaled as fast as his legs could go from the center of town. His mind was so full of worry that he didn't even notice that the crowd was now much larger than it had been previously, like before. In fact, the villagers were lining up on either side of the street. George had been his hope, his only hope, of figuring out what to do with the dragon. If there was anyone in the village, outside of his family, who would understand Graham wasn't a threat, it would have been George. And now he was preparing to come up and slay his best friend. And with orders from the king himself, how could he not follow them? Then his mind flashed to the newspaper headline and what the paper boy had said. Was this mess somehow all of his fault? Had he verified Old Pop's story by declaring what a real dragon was like during his book report? Remember when Kenny gave a book report about a dragon? And he said he knew him from real experience about a dragon? So he was thinking Kenny was now taking the blame that everyone knew about Graham. He was thinking it was really his fault. As he pedaled even faster, the gears in Kenny's mind clicked and whirred, trying to find a solution for his friend. Perhaps Graham could hide out in his cave for a little while until this blows over, he said, thinking out loud. I bet Mom and Dad would let him live in our barn if he had to, even though it is a little tight. He was almost to the top of Shepherd's Hill now. Graham will know what to do, he said as he hopped off his bike. He found the dragon examining himself in an old, full-length mirror, rubbing something onto his skin with a tattered flannel shirt. Kenny, have a look at this, he said with that familiar toothy grin. Your mom gave me some floor wax that polishes my scales up nicely. Look at this sheen, which is shininess. It really brings out the iridescence in my complexion. And iridescence is like the changing colors in his skin. Kenny was panting, completely out of breath. Graham, you have to go. George is coming to fight you. George is coming to what? Why? What's he upset with me for? I didn't damage one single page of his books. Okay, well, I did scorch the cover of that silly bestiary a little. but it totally had me in stitches. He was laughing so hard. Honestly, I don't know where some writers get their crazy ideas from. A camel bard? Of all the... Graham, Kenny interrupted. He's a knight, a dragon slayer who works for the king. The drake hissed, looked at the young rabbit for a second, then resumed polishing his scales, though in a much more frenetic fashion. I thought he was your friend. I thought we had a lot in common. A fellow book lover, a fellow connoisseur of the finer things in life, not some courtly bane sent for my imminent extermination. He threw the rag down on the ground, walked toward his cave entrance, and began tidying. He's not like that, Kenny squeaked as he followed the dragon. Kindly old George had been his friend for as long as he could remember. He's a good guy. He taught me how to play chess, and he introduced me to all of these good books we've been enjoying. The dragon kept his back turned to the lad. Kenny's heart started beating faster and faster. What are we going to do? He asked. I am not going to do anything, the dragon replied in an icy tone. As I told you before, that was the sport of all my brethren, not me. Brethren meaning his fellow dragons, but not him. To fight. He doesn't like to do that. Where was I? That's why I'm still here today, and all the rest of the dragons are all gone. Slain by knights like your good friend George. You tell him there will be no battle between us. No bloody Roman holiday. I won't have it. He has orders from the king himself, Kenny said, and the whole town is gathering together for this. King Schming! Graham turned to face the boy. His eyes were glowing, and wisps of smoke were rising out of his nostrils. What does he know? When was the last time he sat down and talked to a dragon? Instead, the cadger sends some carking varlet up here to do the dirty deed. Meaning, cadger meaning like some beggar. Without even a hello, how are you today? Mind if I cut your throat? Graham calmed down, picked up his rag, and began polishing himself again. Now, if George wants to come up for some ginger beer and a good game of chess, well, then I'd be happy to see him and let his shady past stay where it belongs. But no weapons or pointy things that he can stick, hurl, or jab me with. Kenny slumped his shoulders and looked down. I'm afraid it's not going to happen that way, Graham. Little bantling, said Graham with a sigh as he stopped admiring himself in the mirror. He bent low enough to look Kenny right in the eyes. Don't worry. I just know you will think of something to make this right. Come on now. You're the well-read, smart one, remember? Flabbergasted, which means totally shocked and surprised, Kenny said nothing. The dragon resumed polishing his scales and admiring himself in the mirror as if he was without a care in the world. His mind whirling, Kenny grabbed his bicycle and left. So the dragon basically says, Kenny, I know you're so smart, you'll think of something. Normally, the arduous ride up Shepherd's Hill, which means unending, meant a fast-paced, exciting ride down, but the boy simply walked his bike down toward home. The high noon sun had warmed the soft ground, and there was a gentle, lazy breeze whispering through the leaves as he made his way down the hill. Dragonflies and butterflies flitted all about. One even alighted on his handlebars, but Kenny didn't notice any of this. What on earth am I going to do? He said to himself. Both of his best friends were to be pitted against each other in a battle to the death. Who would win? Would Graham just lie there, refusing to fight and be slaughtered? Or would George, much older now than he was back in the heyday, be burnt to a crisp? The Riverstone feeling had taken over his entire body, and he swallowed hard to hold back the river itself that welled up in his eyes. He was going to cry. Parking his bike on the porch, he was startled by his father bursting out the front door. Kit, Hurry, boy, you're just in time, his dad exclaimed. His mother strolled out of the house behind him, tying a kerchief around her head, which is like a cotton, like kind of head thing. What's going on? Where are we going? Kenny replied. For a moment, his parents' excitement distracted him from the heavy responsibility that he was feeling. There's a parade in town. We just got word, his mom answered as she hopped aboard their sheep-drawn cart. They're in a cart, and it's being pulled by sheep. Funny. It's supposed to be quite a procession. Your father hasn't been this excited since you made that apple crumb pie for my birthday. Now come on, son, his dad said, slapping the spot right next to him on the driver's seat bench. I'll even let you drive. So they're going to go down to a parade, and Kenny's dad says, I'll even let you drive. Both his parents looked at each other. You don't understand, Kenny said. Why do you think they're even having a parade? An early celebration of the annual Corncob Festival? His mom guessed, though it sounded more like she was asking the question. Pig wrestling? His dad added, also in an I'm not so sure this is a trick question sort of way. You guys haven't been in town for a while, said Kenny. This is all about Graham. I'm sure of it. Really? His father replied. I don't know about that. And he paused for a moment, mulling over it, like thinking about it. What would the parade be for? Why don't we go into town and see for ourselves? His mother suggested. Kenny sighed and slowly climbed up onto the cart with his parents. It seemed that as much as he might try to escape it, he found himself heading right back into Round Brook and right back into his worst fears. And here's a picture of them with their cart being pulled by sheep. Well, see you for the next chapter.